guys, welcome to our March 2024 book log. Now I was incredibly busy this month, so I did not get through a lot, so bear with me a bit. The first one we're going to talk about was technically assigned reading, but I had already read the book before, but I have not reviewed it. So I got to reread it, and I love this book, so no it's easy to do, and I get to talk about it with you guys. But that is All Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Remarque. I read this March 5th to March 6th, and there's a lot of background on this book, and it's stuff that I'm quickly realizing that a lot of people who know of the book don't actually know the background, and that's quite terrifying to me because I feel like that's so much of history that's kind of being overlooked with just talking about the book itself. So the author was so this book is World War I, following young men who are soldiers on the Western Front. The Western Front was the worst front of World War I and one of the worst of all times in terms of casualties. I don't know the specifics specifically off the top of my head, but pretty much just like, you're probably going to die. There's little hope. World War I was one of the most casualty-ridden in terms of like soldier deaths and that type of thing. And was practically a meaningless war. So, whoa! Great. But the Western Front was a terror. That is the place you do not want to go to. And that's kind of the irony of it being all quiet on the Western Front, because it wasn't quiet. But so the author was a soldier who was enlisted on the back end of it, and I believe was injured, so he got to go home and survived through it. That's pretty much the way to survive the Western Front, was to be injured and get kicked out. So that happened, and he ends up writing this little book. It's technically not an anti-war book. It just does not paint a positive light on war. Because guess what? It's not a positive thing. Woo! New news to everyone, right? It was important to make that difference because the Nazis certainly viewed it as anti-war, and that leads us into a bit of history in World War II, in which you have the book burnings, in which this was one of the ones that was shot down the most. Allegedly, there was a theater that was bombed showing the Hollywood film in Germany of it, and not to mention a lot of other stuff. The Nazis took offense with him using the French spelling of Remarque and not the German spelling. And then, Father kind of was feeling a bit of tension, so he got the heck out and moved to Switzerland. But his sister and her family were still there because it's a whole other family, And the Nazis took her and executed her. And that's when Remarque got the heck out of Europe as a whole. But it's terrible, and it's more than just what the book shows. You have his own history of World War I, you have the history of the book in regards to World War II, and then you have what the book is talking about in regards to World War I. So it is a whole ordeal, and definitely I recommend looking into it so you have a little bit more precise factual information than what I'm spouting right now. It is really interesting, really sad, but definitely interesting. It's something that should be talked about more than it is. Because people who read the book don't know that. It's like, you should know that. You should know what you're reading. So the beginning prelude is absolutely heartbreaking. We'll actually talk about the book now. He's a phenomenal writer. I know this is a translation, but the storytelling is still so vivid. So between his writing and whoever translated it still did such a good job. You have the isolation of war, of being stripped from everything you've ever known. And how like, where you're from doesn't matter when you're killing people the same age of you that have no impact over politics or any of that regard. You have rejecting your own morals and who you are for the sake of war and kind of throwing that out the window. You have so much PTSD that comes from that, which is obviously makes complete sense. You have just simple things that become dark things just from the way that they view what's happening. And you have the rats. One of the big takeaways, I think, reading the first time was the rat infestation that was in the trenches, which is also not talked about in history that much, but it was infested with rats, and you could not sleep or eat without rats walking over your feet and body, and really disgusting. So there you go, more history on that. You have the price of killing and these young men having to deal with the fact that they just killed someone who is just like them, which is obviously not easy. Then they have to watch their friends die in heartbreaking scenes that make me cry. And then you have the ending of the whole book, which is also incredibly tragic. Yeah, so it's a phenomenal book, incredibly sad. The history behind it is incredibly terrifying to think about, but it has stood the test of time as one of the greatest war novels of all time, definitely the greatest in terms of World War I, and just holds so much history behind its pages and what it stood for. So, woo! I'll climb the Western Front. Oh, I should point out too that I read this because of 86, the anime light novel manga series, in which you watch and read various different books, but the one that is talked about is Climb the Western Front and Remarque, and that's why he names the kin in their barracks Remarque. And the parallels that you see, obviously very different scenarios, one's fictional and completely different, but there's still those war similarities that make it really interesting to see. And also just Western Front versus the 86 Squadron of, if you go there, you're basically going to be killed. And I think it's really interesting. But I'll move on now. So the next one we're going to talk about is the first time reading in a series that we've been talking about a decent amount. A Whole New World by Liz Braswell. This is the twisted tale of Aladdin, in which the punchline is, what if Aladdin never found the lamp? So this is about a similar story up until the Cave of Wonders. When Aladdin has the lamp, he gives Jafar the lamp, but he falls back into the cave and has to crawl his way out, essentially. Basically like dig his way out. And Jafar immediately has the lamp and can do whatever he wants. No friend like me, no Prince Ali, no lying at all. When Aladdin gets out, it's like a whole new world. And acrobat after he ends up taking his way out after a few days. And it's interesting to see. You never have any of the lying and kind of uncomfortable situation with him and Jasmine because of this. You have, I didn't say, I read this from March 15th to March 21st. You have Jafar's really bizarre need for Jasmine, and I think it's more of a power play than anything than him actually liking her. Not that she isn't amazing, but I don't think he appreciates her, you know? You have a lot of depth in this, which I know it's a twisted tale and it's for a young adult audience, but I was not expecting that much. You have Jafar really not fully understanding all of his actions. You really learn in this that his political knowledge is a lot more limited than what he leads on, and that he doesn't actually understand what people want and need in terms of the community. Yeah, no miscommunication between Aladdin and Jasmine. It's just straight up, she's falling in love with this tree rat, and there you go. That's it. Their relationship is really cute. You have Jasmine and an interesting placement that I can't say for spoilers, but it's something that you wouldn't think that a Disney princess would end up being in, but it's definitely interesting to watch that play out. You have the final wish of the genie, that was also interesting. And the ending was cute considering all the bloodshed that happens in this. But I haven't read a bad one of these so far, so definitely a good one. And then the last thing I read was kind of just to keep getting stuff out of the way. I actually read this on stream, so if you're on stream, Amnesia stream 16, I believe, then you would have seen this. But Secret Origins Special by Neil Gaiman, Mark, Carrying My Rain, Alan Grant, and we got this March 21st. Like a lot of the older comic books did not necessarily grasp me too much. There was some fat shaming in there. There was a lot of dialogue text that kind of made it hard to process as well. You have a lot of Riddler in this, which was kind of fun. You don't see him in the front as much. Some Two-Face, which Two-Face is my favorite Batman villain, so that was nice to see. It just dives a little bit more into the villains rather than the hero's perspective, which can also be fun, but was not my favorite execution. So, wouldn't necessarily recommend this. But I mean, these two are fantastic, and this is a phenomenal book. So, yeah, that brings us to the end of March. So, let me know what you guys have been reading, if you've read any of these, if you look up the history and become disturbed, let me know. But, I'll see you guys in April, which I believe I have another assigned reading for my history class, so, but until then, bye guys.